guys, welcome back to the Jenks Island podcast, the only NFL podcast where year takes from a washed-up Division III quarterback and his friends. I'm your host, Grayson Jenkins, joined by my good friend and co-host, Ty McGee. In today's episode, we're going to be breaking down our Week 4 picks. Week 3, obviously chaotic, a lot of field goal blocks, and then the Bucs end up having a field goal get blocked and then still ended up winning a game. So a lot of fun in Week 3, even though that slate at the beginning was really, really ugly. And everyone was like, this is probably the worst slate we've had in years. And then it turned out to be one of the best slate, at least for endings, as far as endings go. Week 4, we got a good slate. We have a Dublin game this week, so there will be an early game to break down. But before we get into those, we want to shout out the leaders in our weekly pick'em group. At the top is Phoenix Fluffer, 38-10, pretty damn solid. Dome Patrol is at 37-11 in second, and He Hate Me Now is in third with 36-12, tied with much others. Ty is included in that group at 36-12. Then I'm at 33-15, tied for 16th. Hammer is at 32-16, tied for 18th, and I believe Sturb is all the way down there.
He's on the board.
He's on the board, but tied for 23rd at 30-18. This past week was really rough for all of us. And just a quick reminder, if you guys are looking into this group, the winner will be getting a jersey. You just have to be subscribed to the podcast. Moving on to our Week 4 picks, Thursday Night Football, Ty. We got the Seahawks, who just absolutely blew the doors out of the Saints, and the Cardinals, taking on the Cardinals in Arizona with their rivalry uniforms this week. So the Cardinals will be playing in style, but they're a team that just lost James Conner, right? They were 2-0 going against the 49ers last week. In a close one, they lost that one, whereas the Seahawks seemingly have a lot of momentum going into this game. Even though it's away, I think the Seahawks have a lot of momentum. Their offense looks better. Their defense looks better. So I'm going to have to go with the Seahawks here. There's not too much to add. I just think the Seahawks are the better team in this one. Who do you got?
Yeah, I got Seattle too. I think, Arizona, I like Trey Benson coming in to replace James Conner, but obviously it is a hit regardless. But Marv's had some drops. He struggled, right? The offense looked pretty good the first 2 weeks. They're trending in the right direction. Last week, they kind of took a step down against just a better opponent. But they're going against a really, really good defense this coming week. And, they played the 49ers with a bit of a banged up team, no Kittle, no Purdy. Seattle barely lost out in a game to 49ers with Purdy and with Kittle. So
it took a Jake Tonjes like crazy miraculous catch in the end zone. So
exactly. So I think Seattle, in all phases of the game, they're really rolling. Special teams, obviously, they played very well against the Saints, and then offensively, Darnold and their offense is starting to get going. Shout out Torrey Horton. He's a dog, man. 6th-round pick out of Colorado State. He's really balling out. So, yeah, I think, Seattle just in every phase of the game is a better team right now.
Yeah, Torrey Horton had that huge game against Colorado, and then I think he got injured or something like that, and he kind of fell off the map a little bit, but he did. There were people out there shouting him out, so shout out to those guys that were believing in him, even though he was a late round pick. Moving on to the Dublin game, the early game, the Sunday slate, we got the Vikings taking on the Steelers. Ty, what are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I mean, I just think this game might be a little ugly, right? It's in Dublin. It's early in the morning. Both these teams, like Pittsburgh, that game against the Patriots, like there's no reason that they should have won the game, right? Like the Patriots kind of gave them away with, fumbles in the end, Stevenson right on the 1-yard line, fumbling it into the end zone, couple different turnovers in the red zone. So, Steelers, they've been on the decline since that first game against the Jets. And even then we had some questions about them defensively. Obviously, defensively, they answered the questions, but then offensively, now they've created a lot more questions with, Rodgers had like 89 yards halfway through like the fourth quarter. So it's just, not looking great over there. And then on the flip side, right, obviously Minnesota manhandled Cincinnati last week, but
not great.
Yeah, I think that says a lot about Cincinnati as a team. And obviously that a lot of that game was defensively, right? Jake Browning had, I think, what was it, like 3 interceptions? Like he just looked.
I think it was 2, and then they had 3 fumbles.
Right, yeah.
A lot of turnovers.
I mean, you know what I mean, right? A ton of turnovers. So Minnesota, I think, has the edge here just because they're playing so well defensively. Carson Wentz did enough to help win them the game. Jordan Mason obviously played well. I don't imagine that this will be, a real great game because Pittsburgh kind of has figured it out on defense. But I do think at the end of the day, Minnesota will win this game and just take the edge because they are, they're just the better team. They're better coached, I think, right now. Not that Tomlin's a bad coach, but O'Connell's doing a great job with Carson Wentz as a backup. So I like Minnesota.
Yeah, no arguments here as far as rosters go. I definitely think that the the Vikings have the better roster and arguably the better coach as well. I think right now Mike Tomlin, although he is one of the better coaches of our generation in the past few decades, he's kind of losing his edge a little bit, and you could say that that's due to offensive talent being lacking, but he definitely is below O'Connell right now. So going into this game, I am going to go ahead and pick the Steelers. It's surprising, but here's my reasoning. I think yes, the Vikings have a better defense and better offensive weapons probably around their quarterback. But I think Aaron Rodgers is going to make less mistakes in this one than Carson Wentz, and that's the overall reason I have them winning this game. I think Carson Wentz, right, like you said, the Vikings defense came out and made it so that there was no pressure on him at all throughout the whole entire game. If there's any pressure on him, I think Carson Wentz takes a step back. And this is one that I think that's going to be a closer, messier game, like you said. So whoever makes less mistakes, and I think that will be the Steelers, will end up winning the game. So I'll pick the Steelers, but I like the difference here in our picks. Moving on to the Commanders taking on the Falcons in Atlanta. The Commanders, obviously, we both picked against them with the Raiders. Without Jaden Daniels, we thought without Jaden Daniels, Marcus Mariota would struggle. He didn't. I mean, he had one fumble, looked like he, had some iffy moments, but their offense as a whole still played really well. Their defense let up a few deep bombs with Geno Smith. I thought it was going to be on Deontay Horton, but it was the Trey. What's his name?
Trey Tucker.
Trey Tucker. Yeah, Trey Tucker coming out party for that one. But the Commanders ended up still winning that game. The Foul Clowns on the other side just lost the game 0-30 against the Carolina Panthers, who a lot of us were putting all the way near the bottom of the power rankings. So it was a really horrific look for that team after coming out of a game against the Vikings. People had slight faith in them, but they've struggled so far. And I think that the Falcons were a team that everyone believed in Michael Penix, but he's not playing. He's 0-4 against teams that score more than 7 points, and that's just not like obviously it's a cherry picked stat. Like we talk about cherry pick stats that they show on broadcasts and things like that just to fit a certain memo, but this situation, like Penix hasn't looked good. He had a few rough moments against Carolina, and the Commanders are better all around than Carolina. So I'm going to have to go with the Commies here, with or without Jaden Daniels. Ty, who do you got?
Yeah, I mean, obviously there's room for concern with, no Jaden and possibly no Terry McLaurin, right? But like you said, Atlanta just hasn't looked great. Obviously didn't look great last week. Got the win against Minnesota 2 weeks ago, but Penix just hasn't looked great.
Yeah,
Defensively, I thought they looked really good against Minnesota, but then they didn't come out this week and they kind of just laid the goose egg. I mean, obviously, Penix throwing a pick six and things like that didn't really help them out. But they didn't look great either, both sides of the ball. So it'll be interesting to see how Atlanta can rebound here. I think they're still a pretty good team. I have them in I think my top 15 to 20 range. Like I think they could be a fringe playoff team. But a lot of it does rely on can Penix figure it out within this offense. And like we've always said with any quarterback in this offense, they have so many weapons. So many weapons. There's no excuses for them to be, play this bad. But yeah, I think the Commanders. They obviously look really good with Mariota. I don't think the Raiders are a good football team either. I think that they're maybe decent. I think we were kind of high on them after that Week 1 win, but they also faltered. So it's just tough to read this one. Like, were the Commanders that good with Mariota or was it the Raiders that bad? But
yeah.
I just have more faith in them as a team right now than I do in the Falcons. So I'm gonna go with the Commies team.
Yeah, I just think the Falcon and this I'll say this really quick. It is an indictment on the Vikings as well. Like if the Falcons beat them, I mean they came back and bounced back this week, right? But the Falcons were able to beat them against that offense at least. And I don't
It's
know if that's
different though. It
JJ.
was with McCarthy. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what I don't know if that's JJ McCarthy. We'll see once he comes back, but we'll see how Wentz and McCarthy progress throughout the rest of the season. Moving on to my New Orleans Saints taking on the Buffalo Bills at the good old crying baby versus atomic bomb matchup here. Ty, what are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, this is my one of my locks of the week. I don't think that I don't know, man. If the Saints game was that bad against Seattle, I am horrified for what this week could look like. And this very well could just be one of those games that somehow the Saints make this a close game. The Bills, they found a way to do that, right? They found a way to do that against Miami last week on Thursday Night Football. But it's a divisional matchup. I think the Bills should really pump the Saints. I mean, I know that you guys have talked, about how well Spencer Rattler has played and how good he looks, but I don't know, man. When you lose that bad, it's like at some point, right? It's got to be on him too. So
Yeah.
Buffalo's obviously one of the better teams in the NFL. They're really, really rolling. Even if they've had close games, they still find a way to win, and that is a statistic, right? That is a important thing. That's something that Tampa Bay has been able to do. That's something that Buffalo's been able to do, right? Finding a way to win close games at the end of the game, no matter what, is a true, it's a trait that you want when you think about teams that can make late playoff runs or win the Super Bowl, right? You want to be able to have that clutch gene in the fourth quarter. So I think that just says something more about Buffalo as a whole. But yeah, I think Buffalo runs the Saints over, unfortunately.
Yeah, no, I can't disagree on the outcome of this game. I think the Bills obviously will win. So I'm picking the Bills. I'm not going to lock it just because I don't want to lock against my team in case we somehow win. Just so I'm like not like I don't know conflict of interest here. But the Bills will win this game. I see it tough for the Saints to come out with a win on this one. I think Spencer Rattler should be able to have a decent game as long as the score doesn't become too high to too low. Because if they're able to space it out well between rushing and passing the ball, I think that's where Spencer Rattler is going to be the most comfortable. If he's passing the ball over and over, that makes it a little bit tougher. But the Bills' defense isn't this insane thing, and that's kind of their issue, right? Their offense is pretty damn good with Josh Allen and James Cook, whereas their defense is a little bit weaker, the weaker side of that team for sure. So the Saints, they like you said, they could end up making it close, but I just think it's gonna be really, really tough for them to come out with a win. And it started off as a 16.5 point spread. It's down to 15.5, but that's the largest spread against the Saints in 40 years. So not a great look. Not a great look at all, but the Bills should be able to win this one at home. Moving on to the Browns taking on the Lions. The Browns obviously just took down the Green Bay Packers and Micah Parsons, and the Lions just came out and put a whooping on the Ravens. And both games were a little bit surprising to people. I picked the Ravens. Ty, did you pick the Ravens last week?
No, I picked the Lions.
You picked the Lions. Okay. Yeah. So I picked the Ravens just because it was home game, and I thought they would kind of, have a little bit more juice on defense than they did. Their defense was absolutely lackluster, and the Lions tore it apart. The Lions offense without Ben Johnson is still drawing up really, really great plays. And maybe people need to start considering like maybe Dan Campbell is good at scheming games up. Like maybe he's a contributor to that offensive game plan and coaching that offensive side of the ball. The Browns, their defense looks absolutely elite. They are 100% a top 5 defense in the league. Except for the Ravens game, in both of their games, they looked really, really good. The Packers, obviously, Jordan Love threw a really, really bad pick late in the game, and then the Browns were able to stop them again. Obviously, it was a blocked kick, so a little bit different. But the Browns came out and won the game. Their offense looked terrible. Their defense looked really good. I'm going to have to pick the Lions in this one. I think the Lions will have a better game. I think their defense is still really good. They're getting a little bit better as we every week goes on. Their D line is getting pressures. Hutchinson and Muhammad are both balling out right now. And Muhammad, let me shout him out real quick. A part of that 2017 Saints draft class. So one of the best draft classes of our lives. So shout out to that. But the Lions will win this game against the Browns. I'm not going to lock it. So like the Browns are a frisky team right now. I can't lock it against them after that volatile win against the Packers, but I'm going to go the Lions here. Ty, who do you got?
Yeah, I'm not ready to jump in and say that the Browns are a top 5 defense yet. I know they looked pretty good, obviously week 1 against the Bengals, but the Bengals are
Mhm.
the Bengals, right? They struggle, especially early season. I know they had Burrow, but
That's fair.
and then, last week, the Packers, I think it was just a regression to the mean kind of with Jordan Love. Like he had that one interception that was just, I literally said, "What the hell was that?" to the screen. Like it was just, no one was there. Like I was
Yeah.
like, "What the hell is that?" So it's just, I'm not ready to jump on them yet because the Ravens literally pumped them. It was horrendous in that week 2
It was
matchup, but
it was 10-3 at halftime, but the halftime adjustments, yeah.
yeah, 10-3, and then what they finished like
It
40 to
was
10 or something like
we
that.
won't get into that second half.
Yeah, exactly. So, if they can come out and stall Detroit a little bit, maybe then we'll start talking about that. But
Mhm.
Detroit, man, I've been saying it since week 1, and everyone wanted to tell me, "Oh, the coordinator change is gonna be such a big issue, and Detroit's not gonna be able to figure it out, and, Green Bay beat the shit out of them, blah, blah, blah." And I told you, give him some time. The offensive coordinator, he's a good guy. He's talented, he's been in the system. Defensive coordinator, he was an NFL player. He's been in the system, right? Both these guys, it's just gonna be step right into the shoes that Aaron Glenn and Ben Johnson left. And we saw how creative they could be last week, right? I mean, that little, pitch speed option that Amon St. Brown and Jahmyr Gibbs
Quick
had.
quick shout out the Saints ran that exact play back in the 2018 season. Maybe Dan Campbell got it from then with Taysom Hill tossing it to Kamara, but just,
Maybe.
maybe.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen that play before, right?
But
It's not,
great
but
play.
it's still doing it, right? Like,
Mhm,
people thought that Johnny Morton was incapable of being creative, right? I think week 1 they played in Green Bay. There's a lot of hype going into that game. They kind of had to get their legs underneath them, and we've seen both these teams kind of trending in opposite directions this week or after this past week. I think Green Bay kind of will bounce back. I think they needed that,
mhm.
right, to kind of humble them a bit, but Detroit is just they're on the up. And I said it, after that game, I could very well see that Detroit, second time around when they're in Detroit, Detroit wins that game. So I think Detroit is, they're climbing for me. They're climbing for me week after week, and I think they handle the Browns, but I'm not willing to lock them in yet.
Yeah, this is a tough one to lock just because you had the I will say you and Sturb had the locks on the Packers last week, so that locking against the Browns again would be
I'm not
risky.
even scared of it. I just think that there are two better locks that are like
Oh,
there is no way
definitely.
in
The
hell
Bi-
that these. Yeah,
the Bills Saints one, and then there's some coming up later
yeah.
as well that we can discuss. Moving on to the one of the shit bowls of the season so far, we got the Titans taking on the Texans. Both teams 0-3 so far. Ty, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I was kind of tempted to take the Titans here, but then I heard Cam Ward might not play. He's a little bit banged up right now. He's questionable. I don't know, man. I think that Houston at some point has got to figure it out. They played three pretty good teams. The first 2 weeks, obviously tough losses at the end of the game. Last week was a horrendous game. They did not look good at all. Kind of just fumbled away opportunities to win that football game. CJ Stroud throws the interception late, as they're going down to try to score. I just, the offense needs to figure it out. I think they're lost. Defensively, right? They still look pretty good.
Yep.
Held Jacksonville to 17. Kind of kept them in, games with the first 2 weeks, right? Obviously against Tampa, and then week 2, obviously another close game. So, I think this is maybe a week that Houston starts to figure it out because Tennessee is a little bit banged up right now, kind of across the board defensively. They just traded one of their starting corners to the Jets, Brownlee. So they're still a team that's trying to figure it out. I think they're very poorly coached. Offensively, right? They've shown a lot, right? Like they scored a lot against the Broncos. They scored against not a lot against the Broncos, but they were able to move the ball against the
Able to
Broncos.
score, yeah.
They were able to score, against the Rams and the Colts. But defensively, they're bad and they're really poorly hit. Callahan's going to go, right? Give him a
It's
couple
not
weeks and
great.
he's going to be gone, and John Gruden's going to be coaching Cam Ward next year. But yeah, that's why I was kind of just tempted to take them because of Cam, and I think that Cam is a dog, and I like Alec Manor, and they've got something going there offensively. But yeah, when you're that badly coached, you're not winning any football games. So I'm going to go with Houston here.
Yeah, I'm gonna agree here. I'm gonna go Houston. I think they bounce back. Like I thought they couldn't go 0-3, but CJ Stroud truly proved me wrong. He had a few moments of struggles again. Nico Collins was finally able to get a little bit more involved. We saw it after week 2. They're starting to get him more involved. That's what you want to see for that offense. Woody Marks is playing really well as well. As far as the other side of the ball goes, the Titans, like you said, really poorly coached. But I do love the Cam Ward to Alec Manor connection building for the future. I think that's going to be a really good connection in future years. Both really, really young players. The Texans should be able to win this game with a good defense as long as CJ Stroud, plays to his average level. I think they should be able to win this one. So I'll go the Houston Texans as well. Moving on to the Panthers taking on the Patriots in New England. The Panthers, obviously, like we said before, 30-0 win against the Falcons. The Patriots, a fumbled away game against the Steelers. So both teams, kind of had opposite directions of where they ended up last week. But this is a good game. This should be a well fought game if they both play to what they should be able to. Like the Panthers, if they play like they did last week, they'll be able to keep it close. If the Patriots don't fumble away games like they did last week, they should be able to have a close game here as well. I'm going to pick the Patriots in this one. I think the Patriots have a better team. Drake May is playing really, really well. If you look at his stats, he's playing like a top 10 quarterback in the league, just as far as stat leaders go right now. The Panthers came up with a few lucky breaks of receiver falling on a route, and then just Michael Penix throwing a terrific ball to the flat for a pick 6 last week. So I think the Panthers kind of regress a little bit, and I think the Patriots win by, I'd say, a touchdown here in New England. I'll give the Patriots the edge. Ty, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm gonna go with the Patriots here too. I think this is kind of the week where they start to give Travion Anderson more of that lead back role, right? I think Ramondre Stevenson quite literally fumbled away that opportunity twice
Yep.
in that game. He's had a career long problem of fumbling. The production is up and down with him, right? Henderson's their guy. He's a young guy. He's got a lot of juice in him, and he's obviously showed out during the preseason. I don't know why they didn't give him the opportunity from day one. He was kind of splitting carries with Antonio Gibson at some points early in the season. So it makes no sense to me. I think, if they go with Henderson, I think they win this game regardless. But if they go with Henderson, I think this offense can start to take, kind of an upward trajectory. But Drake May, man, like he's really given me like Justin Herbert of years past, like stat pad, don't win games, like oh the arm strength and the
Yeah.
he's such a talented quarterback. Look at his stats, and then he's like 8 and 9, right? And obviously Herbert with Harbaugh this year under a whole different trajectory, right? I was very hard on Herbert his whole career, and rightfully so, right? Looked terrible in the playoffs last year. He's never won a playoff game. But he's on the up now, right? They've kind of figured it out, and he's looked phenomenal to start the season. But Drake May, man, that's what I'm saying. Like he's very similar to Justin Herbert, where he's so talented, big guy, can throw the ball, all around the field, and he pads the stats. But this team, man, I don't know. They, I was higher on them to start the season. I thought they could be a playoff team. I don't I don't really foresee that for them right now. And the AFC is weak, so that's saying a lot,
Yeah.
right? Like they're just not that good.
Yeah, I was in the same boat. I think I had them as a higher, like, possible wild card team, and they've let me down so
I
far.
mean,
But
they
I do
lost to
think,
Raiders.
yeah. And it wasn't like a pretty
It was
I mean, it wasn't a
17-10
blowout,
ugly
but
game.
it was ugly,
It was
yeah. So
ugly, and the Raiders just got destroyed. So
just not a great look by Marcus Mariota nonetheless too. It wasn't like a it
former
wasn't
Raider.
like a powerhouse, yeah. So I'll give the Patriots the edge, but the season is not what we expected for them so far. Moving on to the Justin Herbert-led Chargers taking on the Jackson Dart-led New York Giants. Ty, what are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, this is gonna be my other lock, and this is no indictment against Jackson Dart. I'm really high on Jackson Dart, as we know. He was my number 2 quarterback in the draft this past year behind Cam Ward, and I
Mhm.
think Cam Ward is solidifying himself as that number 1, and this is Jackson Dart's opportunity to solidify himself as the number 2. I think he's the only other starting rookie at this point in time, but that kind of says a lot because none of the other guys were even close to winning a starting job, right? Shuck obviously, lost that job pretty easily to Rattler, and Shadur was like 4th on the depth chart. So I like Dart, but this could not be more of a tough matchup. Obviously, the
To
Chargers
start,
defenses
yeah.
look phenomenal to start this season. Jesse Mentor has this team playing on another level. At the start of that Denver game last week, they just looked unblockable against a top 5 offensive line in the NFL, right? Like, and it rattled Bo. Bo, he looked rattled the rest of the game. He would not set his feet. He looked like he was going to have to be running the entire game, and that's just the effect that this defense can have on you when you have a guy like Derwin James blitzing off the edge. He is a real threat. So, and that's not even to say anything about their offense, right? I think their offense looked pretty good last week. Obviously, losing Najee sucks, but Hampton had his first breakout game with no
Yep.
Najee. So, the offense looks on the up. Herbert, obviously, like I said, before, looks phenomenal. So it just, this team is, I think I had them at 4th in my power rankings right now, behind Buffalo, Philly, and Detroit. They are for sure a contender in the AFC. Um, you know, they're on the fast track too to possibly them and Buffalo possibly getting the number 1 seed in the
Yep.
AFC, right? Because Chargers, first 3 games they beat all 3 of their division opponents. They beat the Chiefs and the Raiders pretty handedly. Obviously a close one against Denver, but that seems to be the story that Denver has right now. But the Chargers, like I said, find a way to win, right? We said that about Buffalo, we said about Tampa. You find a way to win, and the Chargers just do that. So, but I think they handled the Giants this week kind of similarly to the way they handled the Raiders. And Dart just it's not good for him week 1. I think when he plays the Saints, I think he'll have a great game, but I
Yeah,
don't think it's this week.
and that's what I was gonna say as well. As for this matchup, it just seemed weird. Obviously, like Russ, had an inexcusable sequence of plays in that last week's game against the Chiefs, and if they had a slightly better quarterback, you could argue that they could have probably won that game because the Chiefs were leaving the door open at times, and Russell Wilson was just atrocious. So that something had to be done, or else Brian Dable would likely lose his job in the next few weeks here. But like you said, horrific matchup for Dart to get his first start in. I do see him struggling a little bit. If he doesn't struggle and he comes out and lights up the place, I mean, that could be huge for the Giants and changing their season around. But like you said, I think the Chargers right now playing at an absolute unstoppable level. Justin Herbert is probably one of the top 3 candidates for MVP at this point in time, right? It's week 3. It's really not that big of a deal, but MVP, Josh Allen, Herbert, and Daniel Jones. Like if you usually MVP, listen, usually MVP is like whoever has the most wins and the best stats. Right now, week 3, it's those 3 teams, but it's going to change a lot I don't think Daniel Jones will be anywhere near that by the end of the season, but right now that's where it stands. But I will pick the Chargers here to win this game. I just think Justin Herbert's playing too well. I think their defense is playing well. I mean, it's crazy to say that Ladd McConkey is their 3rd receiver right now. Like that's crazy for this
Keenan
Chargers
Allen,
offense.
bro.
Yeah,
Keenan
Keenan
Allen.
Allen has
He's a
became
shocker.
Keenan Allen from 5 years ago in his prime. He's back. And I think that like says a lot about coaching and schemes as well. Like just screwing over players for the last few.
You know
Who
who
was it?
his wide receiver coach? Shane Waldron.
Shane Waldron.
You know
Yeah.
where Shane Waldron is right now? Screwing up my boy
I was seeing
BTJ.
it. That's who it was. Yeah.
He's in Jacksonville. He
Yeah.
is the worst coach in the NFL. He's got to be. Every
It's a
time he
curse.
leaves somewhere, the receiver breaks out.
Yeah.
Liam Cohen,
It's
fire his ass. BTJ and Travis Hunter will be 1,000-yard receivers next year.
Cooper Kupp broke out after he left there in LA
Cooper
too. So
Kupp,
it's crazy.
JSN, Roma Dunze.
It's
3
just
guys break out when
a
Waldron
bad
leaves.
look. And Keenan Allen, like he broke out again, like he's back.
Yeah.
So I will give the Chargers this game. I'm not going to lock it, but I do have the Chargers winning
Who are
this
you
one.
locking?
Just wait, Ty. Just wait. Be patient.
Holy
Be
shit.
patient. It's worth it. I mean, it's pretty basic lock picks, but still, it's worth it. Anyways, moving on to the Eagles taking on the Buccaneers. Really good matchup here. Both teams 3-0. Both teams have found ways to win last second and in close games so far. The Bucs obviously won after having a blocked kick that seemingly flipped all the momentum to the Jets, and the Eagles blocked the kick as well to win the game instead of having a kick blocked. So the Eagles seemingly have found their offense. They started throwing the ball to AJ Brown in this past game. In the first half, they struggled. I mean, the Rams were seemingly blowing them out. I texted the group chat, the Jenks Island, all of us in the group chat, and I said the Eagles losing to the Rams is the most obvious pick I've ever made, and that was before halftime. And then after the half, it flipped. The Rams kind of stunk. The Eagles were balling out. They decided to actually throw the ball with Jalen Hurts. They have great receivers. It's like a flip switch, flip switched in their heads. They realized they have good weapons. Might as well use them. AJ Brown was terrorizing the Rams defense. The Rams secondary is really, really not that great. Their line is good. So why run the ball every single play against a
We've
team
been
like
saying
that?
this too.
Right?
We've
Like,
been saying this.
yeah,
We said the front was good, the secondary was suspect.
it's iffy. And especially when you have to go and trade for Emmanuel Forbes, like, you're like, this is going to be a guy for us. Like, that's a risky thing for your team to do. And he did not look great either in that game. The Bucs, Amika Egbuka is balling out. So Mike Evans is out for the next few weeks. Amika Egbuka should be able to step right back up into that wide receiver 1 position. They should be all right on offense. They saw Bucky Irving, Baker Mayfield. They should be good. This is a tough game, but I'm going to pick the Philadelphia Eagles here against Tampa Bay without Mike Evans, things like that. I think Amika Buka will be able to be guarded a little bit more easily without Mike Evans. I think their run game should be stifled a little bit by this Eagles front line. And I think the Eagles just have a better team all around than the Bucs. So the Bucs get their first loss and the Eagles remain undefeated. Ty, what are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I was very tempted to take the Buccaneers because they have been one of
Same.
the better run teams in the NFL since
Mhm.
late last season. They've been one of the better run defense teams in the NFL since late last season. And if this was the Philadelphia Eagles of the first 2 weeks, I definitely would have taken the Buccaneers. But they've shown the ability to pass. Let's see
Yep.
it for another week, right? But I think Tampa has a decent secondary too. So I won't say that it's just going to be they're going to throw the ball over the yard, but Tampa, what really worked me away from them was just the amount of injuries they've had, right? On the offensive line, they had a lot of injuries, and that showed last week with just a
Yep.
lot of the penalties they had. They had 8 penalties in with the first quarter wasn't even finished yet. So, maybe they can clean that up, right? After a week of, you that was your first week with that offensive line. Hopefully things clean up, but they lost some pretty important players on that offensive line. Cody Malk is obviously a great offensive lineman. Mike Evans is a future Hall of Famer, right? To lose him. The silver lining is Chris Godwin is targeting, playing this week. That
Yep.
was always kind of the case, week 4 or 5. And it looks like, he's been limited in practice during week 2 and 3. So, Godwin might be back. Uh, this honestly, Godwin might be the story of the game, right? Like, obviously, this is going to be a great game, but let's see what Godwin, can he come back, right? Everyone's saying he's going to be washed. He had that terrible ankle injury. Chris Godwin, people forget last season was on pace to have one of the best seasons actually the best season in his career. He was on a
Mhm.
crazy pace. I think with Evans out, there's a lot of opportunity there for him. Obviously, Buka's shine, but Godwin has his entire career played with Mike Evans. So I think that I don't think it's a concern. I just really want to see what Godwin can do here. But yeah, I'm gonna have Philly eking this one out, but would not be shocked if somehow Baker Mayfield pulled this one out.
Yeah, this is probably one of the close games to watch, and I think it's gonna be one of the most fun games to watch too, just because it's a pretty evenly matched and they're both good teams. So it's gonna be a fun one. This next one though is equally as fun in my opinion. We got the Colts taking on the Rams in LA. This is right. I mean, the Rams just came out from a rough loss against the Eagles. The Colts are riding high at 3-0 still with Indiana Jones. This game, Ty, what are your thoughts? It's crazy. We'll talk about it.
Yeah, this is gonna be a pretty good game. I think Indianapolis is a little bit banged up on the defensive side, right? They've been banged up in the secondary since that
Mhm.
Denver week, with Traveris Ward and Jalen Jones. Warren's been dealing with some stuff, but they still found a way to win. Um, you know, I, I still am very, very high on the Rams team, right? And I have the Colts in my top 10. I think they're a great team, but I'm very, very high on the Rams team. I think last week was just, I don't know, man. I think it's probably coaching in the second half, right? I think,
Yep.
you come out and you lay goose egg like that, like 9 times out of 10, it's like you didn't make the adjustments at halftime that you needed to. Especially you didn't expect Philly to come out and try to throw the football down that much. Like, obviously they were going to have to change the game plan somehow, right? They have two all pro caliber receivers on the outside. Like, if they just threw the football. So, that was a little concerning, but that's not Sean McVay. That's not the Rams. Obviously, Sean McVay is a fantastic coach. I think the Rams are going to eke this one out. Maybe not eke it, but I think they win by at least 7 points. I just think the Colts at some point in time, the, I don't know. I want to say at some point in time the Colts are going to be like they're going to hit a little bit of reality, right? Like
Yep.
they will beat teams like the Titans, and they eked one out against Denver and stuff like that. Like, I just think like when you play top dogs like the Rams, right? Like the NFC is so loaded. The Rams are
Mhm.
at like 6 in my power rankings or 7, and that's strictly because you have teams like the Lions and the Eagles and the Buccaneers and the Packers, right? The NFC is just loaded with talent. But yeah, I don't know. The Rams, I think they get back on track. Offensively, obviously, they're a problem. And if the Chargers are hurting in the secondary, I think that it could be tough day for them. So I'm gonna go with the Rams here.
Yeah, this is a really fun one to break down. Like you said, Ty, that the Rams are one of the best teams in the league. I have them above the Colts in my power rankings as well. I think I have the Colts at 10 and the Rams right in that 5 or 6 range. I want to say they're 5. But the Rams team, like we said, second half really struggled and exposed the passing game that can be um achieved against them. And I think the Colts kind of utilize that to their strengths, right? They beat a Broncos team already with a really good defense, and I think their offense looked all right in that game. And I know that the Daniel Jones, right? We don't think of him as a passer that's like this top 10 quarterback. Like we don't think of Daniel Jones that way. But in that game, he looked really good. And in the past week, he had just plays where he's in the pocket breaks down, he gets out of it, and is still able to either run for a good amount of yards or find someone open. And he's done that this season so far. And I think that's Steichen, just having good coaching and a good scheme around him. So the Colts here are my underdog pick of the week. I think their pass game will be able to, I think they'll exploit the Rams secondary And Jonathan Taylor's playing like a top 3 back in the league at this point in time. He is. He's absolutely lighting it up week in, week out, making ridiculous plays, highlight level plays every single week. Just last week, he broke like 5 tackles on that 1 touchdown against the Titans, and it killed me in fantasy in a couple leagues. So thanks for
Yep.
nothing, JT.
Yep.
Yeah,
I beat
Ty, I
Jenks
was
because of it.
playing
Yep.
Ty. Yeah, it was rough. But anyways, I do see them winning this game. And looking at their schedule, it's I mean, it's kind of a cakewalk outside of they have the Chargers on the schedule, the Chiefs, who, will be a little bit more healthy
That'll
at
be
that time, and the
they will
Seahawks and
beat
the
the Chiefs.
49ers. Like, that's it. So outside of that, this team has an
They'll
easy
toss a divisional game. Maybe Houston
a
beats
couple,
them.
yeah, Houston might beat them. Jacksonville could beat them, one of those 2 games, but their schedule is much easier than a lot of people think, and I think that they're on a pretty easy path to winning this division, especially with the Texans starting 0-3. But with that
I'll
being
say
said, sorry, go ahead, Ty, go
I'll
ahead.
say this. I'll say this about Daniel Jones, right? You talked about how well he's playing, right? A lot of their offense is predicated on the play action game and the run
Yep,
game really being established, right? If the
definitely.
Rams front is able to, it's a little bit different than Philly last week because they don't, they're not hand the ball off to Saquon, hand the ball off to Saquon, then run play action, right? Some of their,
Mhm.
they're more like a gun passing like type of offense. With the Colts, right? A lot of it is predicated off of the play action game with Jonathan Taylor. If the Rams defensive front is able to stop Jonathan Taylor, I'll be super interested to see how does Daniel Jones do, right? If
Yep,
if teams know that, we're not really concerned about the run, right? We can if we can stop Jonathan Taylor, what kind of Daniel Jones are we going to get? That'll be interesting to see. I mean, obviously he's looked phenomenal in the passing game, but I do want to see that, right? Because Jonathan Taylor has been on a absolute tear, which makes any quarterback's life a lot easier.
does. It definitely does, and you're relying on those explosive plays, but I think Daniel Jones gets the job done. The Colts are my underdog pick of the week. Had to put that
God, dude, I'd burn my ears.
iconic. Anyways,
Get that guy off the internet, bro.
on to the Jacksonville Jaguars on the 49ers in San Francisco. The 49ers obviously are most likely getting Brock Purdy back with Mac Jones. Obviously, Mac Jones played well the last 2 weeks, got them 2 wins in games that, were kind of 50-50 or not really necessarily like you're going to beat these teams no matter what. Like, they were closer games, and Mac Jones pulled them out. The 49ers really excited for Brock Purdy to come back. He's limited practice today, but I do think he will end up playing in this one. The Jaguars on the other side squeaked out a win against the Texans. Like you said, Ty, it took a few turnovers and then just the Texans playing sloppily on offense to win that one. Their offense themselves, Brian Thomas Jr., like we said, Shane Waldron has kind of ran this receiver room into the ground, and that's not what you want to see. And Trevor Lawrence hasn't played the best this season either. So I think the 49ers right now have the momentum. They're playing better as a whole, as a team. I'm going to pick the 49ers here, but I would not be surprised if Jacksonville wins at all. I think the Jacksonville Jaguars are a good team. It's just the wide receiver room is just it's killing me right now. So I can't pick them. I'm going to go with the 49ers. Ty, who do you got?
Yeah, Jacksonville has a great offense, and Liam Cohen's a
They do.
great offensive mind. But as long as Shane Waldron's there, this offense will they will not accomplish much. Yeah, like you said, San Fran's looked fantastic through the first couple weeks, even with Mac Jones. I really think Mac Jones has the possibility to be, next year's Daniel Jones, Geno Smith, Sam Darnold, et cetera. Right? It seems like the trend is go to a West Coast offense where whether it's O'Connell, whether it's Pete Carroll, whether it's Shanahan, and then you figure it out, right? Darnold was in San Fran, and then he was in Minnesota. He's figured it out. Regino went to Pete Carroll in Seattle. He figured it out. Baker Mayfield went to LA. He figured it out. Daniel Jones was in Minnesota. He figured it out. Right. It seems like the formula is go to one of these quarterback guru
Yep.
coaches and you can have a rebound season. So, with what we saw with Mac from the first 2 weeks, I wouldn't be surprised if next year he was competing for a starting job somewhere. But back to the game, I just think in all phases, right? San Fran is playing better right now. Obviously, even banged up offensively, they've looked pretty good. Defensively, despite being a younger unit, they've played well in a lot of these games. Um, the one thing was just the kicking game. Obviously, Moody was not great, but they still found ways to be undefeated. Against good division opponents too, right? They beat Arizona, They beat Seattle. I think that this game, I don't really think it's going to be that close because Jacksonville, they just haven't looked great against anyone that's that good, right? Like they had the high scoring game against the Bengals, but that team is garbage, as we know. So I think the 49ers probably win this game by a couple scores, and Brock Purdy has a nice rebound game. Maybe he throws a touchdown to Jake Tonjes.
Maybe. Yeah, like, all the fantasy owners out there that spent all their fab budget on Jake Taun just to replace George Kittle would be very, very ecstatic if that happened.
Yeah.
Moving on to the Ravens taking on the Chiefs in a game that has huge implications, right, on this AFC playoff picture. Both of these teams looking to, get back on track here. I mean, the Chiefs won last week, but it was against the Giants, so I'm not considering that back on track fully yet. The Ravens losing badly to the Lions. Both teams 1-2, trying to avoid falling to 1-3, which is a really, really tough spot to be in the AFC, even though this year, AFC is not as loaded as it has been in the past. The Ravens Chiefs game. Ty, what are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the Chiefs, they win last week, but it wasn't a convincing win against the
Yep.
Giants. I mean, their bright spot on this team is Tyquan Thornton, which who would have thought, that would be the case
Yeah.
before the season. He's obviously having a great start to the season, but they get Xavier Worthy probably back this week. Let's see how that kind of affects his role. And I'm very low on Worthy, right? But if he plays and he's playing over Thornton, I don't think that this offense is necessarily getting any better, right? Thornton's looked really good. He's the hot hand. Worthy, all last season without Rashee Rice, he didn't have a single 100-yard game. Like, I just, we talked about it in the fantasy episode. I'm not high on him at all. I think, on the other side with Baltimore, I think this is a get right game for them. And this is crazy. Could you imagine 2 years ago me saying that a get right game was going to be against the Chiefs, right? Like you were going to figure yourself out. But I think it's going to be that for Baltimore. I think the fumbling issues with Derrick Henry have obviously been a concern, one every week so far this season. Even though he's had some monster games, he's looked great. It's just the fumbles late have kind of
Yep.
thrown the game for them. I just and the front, right, was a concern this past week too. Lamar got sacked, I think 6 times, 7 times. But I think that was just a lot of Detroit scheming up really, really well. I think, their loss against Buffalo, they played Josh Allen, they had the late fumble. I think they lost the coaching battle last week against Detroit. I don't think there's a way in hell that they lose this game. I have a hot take on this game. I think I'll save for later, but I don't know. The Kansas City Chiefs are not the team that we once thought they were, and the Baltimore Ravens, they kind of do this thing. Remember last year they started off 0-2,
Yep.
they lost to the Raiders, and then they were one of the best teams in the NFC to finish the season. So
Yeah, no, I'm going to take the Ravens here in this one easily over the Chiefs. I think the Chiefs, I mean, I've said it before on this podcast. I had a really bad clickbait TikTok that I said that they were going to go 9-8 this season. Like, and I went through game by game, and I had them starting 1-3, and this was the game that puts them to 1-3. I've picked every game right so far in that prediction, so I think that stays true this week. The Ravens are the better team right now. They're more loaded on offense and defense. The defense did struggle against the Lions, but I think they'll be able to bounce back a little bit. Like you said, Ty, Xavier Worthy is not the catch, the save all for the Chiefs here. He's a solid receiver, but he's not, he's not
that's
a
not even their
huge number
problem,
one.
too. They can't run the football.
Yeah,
They
and
can't
they can't.
protect, right?
Kareem Hunt is not, he's just not who you want as your running back one. Neither is Isaiah Pacheco. Isaiah Pacheco obviously was running backwards to the line of scrimmage and the opposite way of Patrick Mahomes on that one fumble play. That if the Giants get that ball, they could very easily have won that game. So the Chiefs were very lucky that Patrick Mahomes made a good play, and seemingly right now, Patrick Mahomes is the only player on this team that is able to really make plays for them. Obviously, like you said, Tyquan Thornton is playing well too, but I just don't think that's enough to beat the Ravens. So I have the Ravens winning in this one as well. Moving on to the Bears taking on the Raiders in Vegas. This one's it's an all right matchup. I mean, you got Caleb Williams and Ben Johnson, who are kind of building things in Chicago over there, and then the Raiders. I mean, they were kind of where people expected right now. They're all right, but they're not a team that anyone's fearing. They're just really not. I don't think their defense is good enough to be a team that people fear. And the Commanders' defense are a team that people, kind of expected Geno Smith to go off against, and he did towards the end of the game, but too late. It was after the game was already over, so it's kind of garbage time points for him and in fantasy. But Geno Smith and the Raiders do have a good amount of weapons. He trusts all the guys over there. That's something you want to see. Brock Bowers is a little bit limited by the injury right now. The Bears, though, on the other side, their defense bounced back a little bit against the Cowboys. Obviously, CeeDee Lamb went down. That's not what you want to see for the Cowboys. But the Bears defense outside of that had a solid game. And hopefully you see them build on it this week against the Raiders. I'm going to go with the Bears here with just that offense playing well right now. I think Caleb Williams is getting his feet under him a little bit more. And I think they'll be able to have a solid performance again against this Raiders defense. So I'm going to go the Bears here. Ty, who do you got?
Yeah, I think, the defense being bad is the biggest point here, right? It's
Mhm.
just the Bears can take advantage. They have enough firepower and they're well enough coached that maybe they're trending in the right direction, but they're just good enough to take advantage of bad defenses. Their
Yep.
their lone win is against one of the worst defenses in the NFL. So I'm going to go with the Bears here too. I don't know. I expected a little bit more out of the Raiders after that Week 1 win, but they returned to Raiders form with, just how bad that offensive line is. I saw a stat actually that it was like Ashton Genty has more yards after carry than he does yards. I don't know necessarily if that's true. I did not vet
Wait,
that.
you said yards after carry. You mean not after contact? Is that what
Excuse me.
you?
Yes,
Yeah,
yards
yeah.
after contact.
Okay.
Excuse me. Yes, more yards
Yeah, that.
after
Yeah.
contact than he has yards. I mean, obviously that says a lot about Ashton Genty. He is a great yak back, right? Like
Yeah.
that's him, right? He takes a hit and he runs. That is a horrendous stat, if true, right? I did not verify, did see it on Twitter, could be a lie, but it's believable, right? It
Mhm.
has me hooked because that offensive line is so bad. So
Yeah.
Bears.
If you're out there on a dynasty team and Ashton Genty is somehow on a trade block and you want to buy low, now is the time. Now is the
Yeah.
time to buy for Ashton Genty. Moving on to Sunday Night Football, Ty, probably a second little atomic bomb versus coughing baby matchup here. You got the Packers taking on the Cowboys without CeeDee Lamb, and obviously with Micah Parsons now on the opposing team coming back home. Ty, who do you got?
Yeah, it's just tough for Dallas right now, right? With no CD, Tyler Booker goes down. Offensive line's just banged up. If they were at full health, maybe they'd have a chance here, just because I think they have enough offensive firepower. And Green Bay's offense looked horrendous last week. But I think this is, like I said earlier, this is a chance for Green Bay to bounce back after a disappointing showing last week. I think the biggest concern is, can they get Josh Jacobs and the run game going again? Probably part of that was based, you're playing Myles Garrett, right? It's tough.
Mhm.
But I think Micah has a big game, obviously with that offensive line being banged up, and that's always huge, right? If your defense is playing well, the offense can run the football. They'll figure it out. So I'm going to go with Green Bay here. I don't necessarily think this is a close game either.
Yeah, this is my first lock of the week. I'm gonna go Green Bay. I think their offense is gonna be able to succeed against this Cowboys defense. It's a really, really bad defense, and their offense is lacking. So I gotta go Green Bay here as well. Moving on to the first Monday Night Football game, we have a slate here, luckily, because this first one is the second shit bowl of the week with the Jets taking on the Dolphins. Really, really rough game. Don't really want to sit here and break it down too long. The Dolphins did play a close game against the Bills. Jets had a close game with Tyrod Taylor against the Bucs. So maybe this game could be better than people expect. I am going to go with the Dolphins here, finally getting their first from the season. I think their offense is playing a little bit better, and it's a home game that just gives them a little bit of an advantage. So I'm going to go with the Dolphins here, but I think it could be ugly. It could be close. This game's a true 50-50 for me. You can pick whoever you want, but I do think the Dolphins pull it out. Ty, who do you got?
Yeah, it's my upset of the week pick here. I'm going to go with the Jets over the Dolphins.
I like
The
it.
Jets have played close in every game except for against the
Yep.
Bills, and obviously that was a game where they had to make a quarterback change mid-game. Not saying that would have made the game any closer, but it's never easier. It's never easy when you have a guy who wasn't preparing with the ones all week, and then he has to come in.
Mhm.
And then you saw last week, Tyrod Taylor played pretty well. They competed with the Buccaneers. Obviously, the field goal block helped them a little bit, but they came back, because that offense was able to finally move the ball. So whether it's Field, whether it's Tyrod, I think that they get the job done here. I am obviously very low on the Miami Dolphins. So yeah, Jets upset pick.
Yeah. No, the Dolphins, both of these teams are probably in the bottom 5 to 7 of that power rankings for everyone. So it's not the most fun game on paper, but it could be fun on the product on the field. The second game tie of this Monday Night Football slate are the Bengals taking on your Denver Broncos. The Bengals obviously just had probably the worst game of the weekend, and that's including that Saints Seahawks game. So they had the worst performance of any team. And then the Broncos, um, they lost, but they at least had a solid performance, a solid game. It was better than the Bengals, I'll say that. But what are your thoughts on this one for your Broncos?
Yeah, it's just another week where we're like this close to winning the football game, right? The craziest stat in our losses, we have not trailed once in the fourth quarter, not even for a second. Both game losing field goals so we have not trailed in the fourth quarter. I mean, that is an
Yeah.
insane stat. Lost by 4 points. But Denver, I think this is the get right game for them, right? Last year we saw them against Cincinnati, had a lot of success offensively, both threw for 300 yards, 3 touchdowns, I believe it was. Marvin Mims had a really good game, right? That was when they started to kind of click, the two of them. During that time of the season, right towards the end, Marvin Mims really had an uptick in production at the end of the season. And you saw him go to Marvin twice last week. And it's just, I don't know if Marvin's slowing down. I don't know if Bo's slightly overthrowing, but it's like it's such a small margin, right? It's
Yeah.
not like Bo's overthrowing the crap out of him. It's hitting like the tips of Marvin's fingertips. And I'm not saying that he should catch those balls, right? I think what Bo needs to start doing, and I kind of heard Tim Jenkins talk about this, is just start to put the ball on guys more, right? Like, you don't need to lead him all the time. Sometimes when a guy's wide open, just take the 40 yards. You don't need the touchdown. Get into the field goal range and just put it on him, right? He did that.
Yep.
You saw it on the fourth down play against the Chargers last week on that fake pitch. He put it on Sutton, and Sutton was able to get in the end zone. So I want to see more consistency out of the Bo, right? He'll have one good play and then he'll overthrow. There was 3 overthrows in that game that lost us the game. It was the 2 to Mims and the 1 to Sutton at the end of the game. You got to be on those, right? Especially when they're that open. I know the offensive line didn't look great, but yeah, defensively we looked really, really good. Had a lot of pressure. Herbert had an interception, took 5 sacks, right? Like, he didn't look fantastic except for that last drive. He obviously, had that amazing touchdown. And even then, defensively, we got pressure on him. Riley Moss was right there. It was just a great play by Herbert. And a great catch by Quentin Johnson. I know a lot of Denver media and Denver fans are low on Riley Moss, but
Mhm.
he's playing across from the defensive player of the year. Like, he's going to get a lot of targets, and he is allowing less than a 50% completion percentage. So I'm tired of hearing that crap. But J.K. Dobbins playing well. I just want to see R.J. Harvey a little bit more involved,
Yep.
and Bo really start to hit on his throws. Outside of that, right? I think we've looked really good in a lot of defensively, and in the run game. It's just Bo's he's got to be there, man. And then this is the week, right? You're playing a really bad defense. Take advantage of that. Your defense, Jake Browning's going to have a tough day, right? Obviously, last year Joe Burrow was able to slice and dice injured Riley Moss with T. Higgins, but it's Jake Browning now. So, I think I was considering locking this game, but I didn't want to do it. I thought the Chargers game and the Bills game, they're playing way worse opponents,
Yep.
but maybe not, barely worse than this team. But yeah, I don't know. I want to see a big win. I want to see a 20-point win, right? I need a statement.
Yeah, no, I'm gonna go with the Broncos here. I'm not gonna add any analysis. I just think not add much analysis. I just think that they're the better team. I have to ask Ty, what's going on with my boy Pat Bryant? Has he seen the field at all, or is it just
Hardly. He's gotten a couple snaps here and there. It's just that they go truly a lot of 11 personnel, right? So
Mhm.
tight end and a back. And so you get Troy Franklin, who had the great game 2 weeks ago, and then obviously Mims and Sutton out there. And Trent Sherfield, and more often than not, is going to get out there for the rundown. So
Yeah.
because he's a great run blocker. So Pat's gotten in a couple times. I think he had maybe 1 target, but it's going to be tough for him because of the
Yeah,
way
you
that we
guys
play personnel wise.
yeah, and you guys have a good receiving room. I will say I want to see RJ Harvey get more involved as well, especially this week. I think the Bengals have an iffier run defense, and J.K. Dobbins is balling out. So the
Right.
Broncos
It's
should
hard.
be
It's
able
hard to
to
play RJ
bounce
when
back.
JK
Yeah.
JK's playing so well.
Yeah, he's playing like he was in in the first few weeks last season where everyone's like J.K. Dobbins is back, and then the Rams let him walk, or the Chargers let him walk. So
He got
yeah,
hurt.
I think he's back, and he should have another good game here for the Broncos. I have them winning as well. Moving on to our rapid fire discussions here, Ty. First, we're going to start with our fantasy sleepers of the week. Ty, who is your fantasy sleeper of the week?
Yeah, I kinda talked about him a little bit in that last game. My fantasy sleeper of the week is Marvin Mims. He was about 2 inches away from 2 massive, massive touchdowns last week, on the flea flicker and then that one overthrow in the end zone. He catch that, he's looking at a 20+ point game. Obviously, Bo's starting to go to him again. Last year, he had a really, really good game against this Bengals team. He had that, really, really long touchdown that Bo had the longest air yards throw, and then he had that insane catch in the end zone in double coverage to send it to overtime. So I think Mims, he's one of those guys that sometimes guys, if you're in a deeper league, you'll throw him in your flex. I think he's probably a pretty safe-ish flex this week, especially if you're a guy that's dealing with some injuries just because of the deep ball threat that he is and how bad this Bengals defense is and what he was able to do against them last year.
Yeah, my sleeper, another Bronco here. I'm gonna go with J.K. Dobbins, and I don't know if that's too big of a sleeper at this point in time after his performance last week because he has become more of a bell cow guy for the Broncos. But the Cowboys defense allowed 7.2 yards per carry to Jordan Mason last week, and I think J.K. Dobbins is a better running back. So I think J.K. Dobbins is gonna have a really really good week this week. Maybe they get R.J. Harvey a little bit more involved, takes a few carries from him, but I think he'll still be poised to have at least 12 points for all the fantasy owners out there. So if he is like your RB3 and you're kind of debating putting him in as a flex, I think it's definitely worth the move this week against the Cowboys. Moving on to our hot takes of the week. Ty, what's your hot take of the week going to be?
Yeah. Quick question. What did you say that Bills Saints spread was? 14.5?
It's 15 and a half.
15.5? I would feel comfortable taking an alt spread close to that in the Ravens Chiefs game. I think the Ravens win this game by 14 to 21 points. I think that's how bad of a game this is going to be. I think a bounce back game for them. I don't know. Is it a hot take? I think it is. I think if I'm telling you to take any team over the Chiefs by 14 points, that's a lot. But I think it's the Ravens' week.
Yeah, I'm kind of blown. That was my hot take as well. The
Wow!
Ravens win by 14 plus points.
Look at us.
I will say, Ty, I was looking at the board. I'm like, there's not a lot of hot takes. And this one, I feel very, very confident in the Ravens winning this game by a whole lot. I just think the Chiefs are at that point in time where they're struggling a little bit. The Ravens need a get right game, the bounce back, and they're going to just be pissed off this week. So I think they blow out the Chiefs. If I have to give a second one just to kind of, give something
Now
out
let's
there.
ride with it.
I mean, I'll ride with it, but I did want to say this too. I think
All right.
Matthew Golden or Romeo Dubs, whichever is the Packers receiver one choice for the week, has 150 plus yards this week. Goes off. I think that's definitely possible. We'll see if it occurs, but it's definitely possible. And I
And
think
for
in
the
the
listeners,
last,
we
yeah,
don't
go
we
ahead,
don't
Ty.
discuss it. We don't discuss this beforehand. So that
Yeah,
14 plus pick, that was
it was a surprise, but
same wavelength.
um, I will say I think in the last segment when we were talking about sleepers, I think I said the Cowboys for the Broncos, but it is the Bengals defense. Just to correct
Okay.
myself, the Cowboys were for Matthew Golden or Romeo Dubs, whoever goes off. It's going to be one of those two has 150 plus yards. I'm confident in that pick because Romeo Dubs did it in the playoffs a few years ago. So I believe it could happen, and I think the defense is worse than it was a few years ago as well. Anyways, Ty, you have any closing thoughts for the episode?
No, I
Yeah,
I
it's
got nothing. We
this
laid it
week's
all
gonna
on
be
the line
fun.
today.
Yeah, this we laid it out on the line, and this week is a fun slate. We got all the analysis out. Get ready for your cereal while eating your breakfast for the what is it, Dublin game. Get ready for
Yep.
that. We talked about that every single year.
Get your
We
Lucky
love,
Charms.
yeah. That's it. Is that your cereal of choice, Ty?
No, it's Dublin. Come on, Lucky Charms.
All
Look at the Irish.
right, all right. Let me ask you. I asked Hammer this when we broke down like the morning games. What is your favorite cereal of all time?
I'm a Golden Grams guy. Low key. I like
What
I
an
like a Golden Graham a lot.
that's a very obscure take, but I like it.
Yeah, I don't know. It's got great taste, but a Lucky Charm, they're good too. I like to switch it up. I really don't have a go-to cereal.
Yeah.
I'm kind of I like to revolve it. Frosted Mini Wheats, that's a banger. Actually, that could be 1A.
You have you ever had chocolate mini wheats? Those are good.
No, no, I'm not a
Those are good.
chocolate breakfast cereal guy. I don't even like
Okay,
chocolate pancakes either, honestly.
really? Chocolate chip?
Yeah, yeah, no chocolate chip. Don't give me chocolate chip
Interesting.
pancakes.
So
Don't give me
no sweets for Ty in the morning.
marshmallows. Lucky
Oh,
Charms,
yeah, the marshmallows,
Fruity
okay.
Pebbles, just no chocolate. I don't want no
No
Count
chocolate.
Chocula. Cocoa
Couch
Pebbles.
couch
Actually, I do go
Cocoa
cocoa for
Pebbles,
Cocoa Pebbles.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cookie
Cocoa
Crisp,
Pebbles like a
maybe? Cookie Crisp? Maybe I take it back. Maybe I can be a chocolate guy
He
anymore.
said, hold up.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I gotta go CTC in the morning. If there's a morning football game overseas, get yourself a bowl of CTC and start just watching football. This isn't gonna be the most appetizing game to watch, right, while you're eating your cereal, but it still should be
It's
a
still
good
football.
time.
It's still football.
Exactly. So it is the blessing to live on the East Coast here for early games. I know the people on the West Coast, aka Sturb, having to
6
wake up
a
at
6 AM.
6 a.m. for that
That is
6 a.m. for
brutal.
that game
6
kinda
AM to watch
sucks,
Vikings
but
Steelers
yeah, that's not what you want. That's not what you want.
with Rich Eisen and Kurt Warner on the call.
Is the Monday night game, is that at 10 o'clock again? Or the second one? Or is it
No,
like 8?
7 and 8. 7 and 8.
Okay, that's how it
Oh,
should
dude,
always
if I
be.
had to watch the Broncos game at 10 o'clock, are you kidding me?
Yeah,
I'd be
the 10
rioting
o'clock 10 o'clock was wild what was it, last week or 2 weeks ago? 10 o'clock
2 weeks ago, yeah.
was
Brutal,
wild. But
brutal.
anyways, that'll do it for our week 4 picks episode. You guys know what to do. Comment down below if you guys disagree or agree with our picks. Check us out on social media at Jenks Island and wherever you get your podcasts at Jenks Island as well. We'll see you guys next week.